The footage presented from Vampire in Brooklyn originates from a fictional horror film. Any references to violence or mature content are purely fictional. All actions are executed by a professional cast and crew. The footage is intended solely for commentary and analytical purposes. Vampire in Brooklyn is a 1995 horror comedy directed by Wes Craven. The film features Eddie Murphy, who also co-wrote and produced it alongside his brothers, Vernon Lynch and Charlie Murphy, Angela Bassett, Alan Payne, Kadeem Hardison, John Witherspoon, Zakes McKay, and Joanna Cassidy round out the cast. In addition to his main role, Murphy takes on the characters of an alcoholic preacher named Paulie and a crude Italian-American monster called Guido. Production.
And I had a wonderful stunt double also at the time. She had been my stunt double in What's Love and this, and in Vampire in Brooklyn. And unfortunately, I mean, it's a really tragic that she lost her life on that project.
Vampire?
On Vampire in Brooklyn.
Goodness.
Yeah.
During production, stunt performer Sonia Davis tragically lost her life while executing a 42-foot backward fall.
But I take solace and comfort that just before, we were all in the makeup trailer and we were looking like twins, and we were talking about it, and she had such a love for stunts and for doing it, and she was great at what she did. And we got to pray together. So as Wamanda says, death comes, but we know it's not the end.
Correct.
Wes Craven, Eddie Murphy, and Charlie Murphy shared their thoughts on the film.
And I love Wes's movies. Last House on the Left, The People Under the Stairs. My favorite is The Serpent and the Rainbow. I like those movies you get at popcorn and your girl snuggled up watching it. Something happens and you feel your girlfriend grab your leg real tight. All that stuff. That's a good, great date movie.
Craven mentioned that he aimed for the humor to come from the story itself, rather than just Eddie's performance, emphasizing, I wanted Eddie to be essentially a serious character. He also stressed the need for the audience to connect with the characters, saying, even if they didn't know any vampires personally, they would at least have to identify with the type of person Maximilian was. Eddie Murphy expressed his thrill about taking on the role of the villain, saying, I've always wanted to play a bad guy in a movie. I'm a huge fan of horror films and Wes Craven. He appreciated the mix of horror and comedy, adding, I get to crack jokes as the preacher and as the Italian guy. Meanwhile, the vampire is pretty serious, but there's all this funny stuff going on around me.
Was he ever tempted to, kind of beef up the humor of his role?
No, I was, but he really wanted to do a serious role. I mean, as you know, he goes into two other characters in the film that are incredibly funny and wild.
Charlie Murphy shared that the film was originally meant to be a typical horror flick, but Craven shifted the focus to make the characters more relatable. He mentioned Maximilian was supposed to be completely unlikable, but Wes showed us that we need to make the audience care about our characters. This shift made the villain more complex and interesting for viewers.
But His central character of Maximilian the Vampire, he wanted to play straight. He wanted this to be a true villain and somebody that people would take seriously and be afraid of, and would be a true vampire.
Well, I wanted to do something that was, a little different. I never played a villain in a movie before, and what's interesting about this part was it gave me the opportunity to do something that's kind of serious and that can be funny too, because vampires can change their shape according to vampire folklore.
So he was very disciplined with not letting him go too far. Occasionally we'll say something that is wickedly funny, but he never starts doing shtick.
He was playing the straight man, and a great straight man. And he made it so much easier for me to be funny because he was so serious.
No, I didn't even take my regular salary that I take on this movie. This was like a small picture and turned into something big just in how it turned out. But we approached it like, let's do a little small horror movie. Then we got Angela Bassett, and the script turned out the way it turned out. Then Wes came aboard, and it turned into like a movie. But it started out something small. Actually, Wes came aboard first. He made everything else come together.
The filming took 55 days, with 3 of those days spent shooting in New York City and the rest in Los Angeles. Critical analysis. Vampire in Brooklyn hit theaters just in time for Halloween. It mostly got slammed by critics and was seen as a low point for both Murphy and Craven. The following year, 1996, Craven shifted gears to the wildly successful Scream franchise, while Murphy focused on more family or regular films, including his remake of The Nutty Professor. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds a dismal 11% approval rating from 35 critics, with the consensus stating, neither scary nor very funny, this misguided effort never lives up to its premise. Metacritic gives it a score of 27% based on 17 reviews. However, audiences surveyed by CinemaScore rated it a solid B+ on an A+ to F scale. Vampire in Brooklyn didn't exactly win over audiences, struggling to find the right balance between horror and comedy. Critics like Peter Stack from the San Francisco Chronicle thought Eddie Murphy's take on the vampire Maximilian was strangely cumbersome, saying the film was neither funny nor frightening. Murphy's performance was seen as lacking the intensity you'd expect from a vampire, with Roger Ebert noting that his attempt at a darker role felt comically missing. Wes Craven's direction got mixed reviews too. Some, like Adrian Martin, thought he did a great job blending horror and humor, even calling it Craven's best movie since Shocker. But many felt the overall tone was all over the place. Desson Howe from the Washington Post pointed out that the film didn't really deliver on tension, stating, "It's neither all that scary nor all that hilarious." Gene Siskel went as far as to label it a clunker, despite Craven's experience. The supporting cast, particularly Kadeem Hardison as Julius, brought some laughs, but the humor often missed the mark, with Owen Gleiberman from Entertainment Weekly calling the jokes lame. Angela Bassett, while strong in her role, didn't get enough screen time, with Hal Henson from the Washington Post saying it was a waste of her talent. In the end, Vampire in Brooklyn fell short of expectations, with Karen James from the New York Times commenting that it failed to leverage Murphy's star power, and Roger Ebert quipping that calling it a comeback for Murphy showed blind faith. The film's chaotic mix of horror, comedy, and romance led many critics to deem it an uneven and forgettable flop. Box office. Vampire in Brooklyn hit theaters in the US and Canada on October 27, 1995. It made $7 million during its opening weekend across 2,307 theaters, averaging about $3,053 per theater, which put it in third place for the weekend. It trailed behind Get Shorty, which earned $10.2 million in its second week, and the new release Powder, which brought in $7.1 million. In its second weekend, Vampire in Brooklyn dropped to 5th place, earning $4.4 million, a 37.6% decline from the previous week. It was just behind Fair Game, which debuted with $4.9 million, and ahead of Home for the Holidays, which made $4 million. By the third weekend, it fell to 9th place with a $2.3 million take, just behind Seven, which earned $2.5 million in its 8th week, and ahead of Gold Diggers, The Secret of Bear Mountain, which made $1.6 million in its second week. By the fourth weekend, Vampire in Brooklyn dropped out of the top 10, grossing only $1 million. Vampire in Brooklyn ended up making $19.8 million, which placed it as the 82nd highest grossing film in 1995 across the US and Canada. When you look at international earnings, it pulled in an additional $15.2 million, bringing its total worldwide gross to $35 million. While it wasn't a complete disaster, the film didn't quite live up to the hype, especially considering the big names involved. Its rapid drop in box office rankings and underwhelming domestic earnings hint that the mixed reviews probably played a big role in the lack of ongoing interest.
Drive the limo and shut your mouth. Shut up!
A fresh look back. When it first came out, Vampire in Brooklyn was considered one of the weaker films from Murphy and Craven. Murphy himself admitted this in a 2016 chat. Honestly, I doubt the New Yorker will be raving about Meet Dave. What a classic. I'm not sure if there's a Pluto Nash fan club anywhere, or maybe a Holy Man support group, and definitely not a Vampire in Brooklyn fan club. Since it came out, Vampire in Brooklyn has turned into a cult favorite. In the book Wes Craven, The Art of Horror, John Kenneth Muir gave a shout out to the film, highlighting the chemistry between Murphy and Bassett, the comedy, the special effects, the score, and the charming vibe reminiscent of the 1930 SM40s film critic Joe Ladon even called it one of his guiltiest guilty pleasures. Charles Pulliam Moore from Gizmodo labeled Vampire in Brooklyn as one of the most underrated horror movies ever, praising it as one of the most unique films in this genre and one of the best. Monique Jones from Shadow and Act pointed out that Vampire in Brooklyn stands out in Murphy's filmography, making it one of his more intriguing projects. Andrew Shearer from Online Athens highlighted it as one of Murphy's most underrated performances.
What's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this?
But I want you to know I understand the Negro people.
Yes, well, then you'll understand this.
Vampire in Brooklyn is like when you're a kid and you say to yourself, I want to be an actor, or I want to be a star, or you set a goal for yourself. And I'm watching Eddie Murphy on television, and at the time, Eddie Murphy's a big star. He just did 48 Hours, and with Nick Nolte. It's clear to everyone he's going to become this major star.
Who were your movie heroes?
Eddie Murphy? I guess before Eddie, because Eddie was the first time, he was the first cat I looked at and thought, I want to do that, and I can do that. I can reach out. That's a star that I can shoot for. Not as in to overtake, but that's something that, he looks relaxed, he's young. I was represented finally. And I said to myself, I want to be an actor. Just cut 2 years later. And here I am in a movie with him that he requested me to be in. It makes you feel good about yourself and about the choice that you make.
Stephanie Williams of Sci-Fi Wire referred to the film as a spooky time favorite, applauding Bassett's acting, the humor, especially from Hardison and Witherspoon, and noted that infusing Caribbean culture into the traditional vampire lore was a brilliant move for obvious reasons. Rich Knight from Cinema Blend calls the film an underrated classic, stating, I don't care what anyone thinks. I really love this movie. Anthony Francis over at Screen Rant highlighted Maximilian as one of Craven's top villains and complimented Murphy's acting, saying his performance is calculated and fine-tuned to near perfection. In 2021, Keisha Ford-Day from Essence recognized the film as a cult classic, noting how it stands out from typical horror comedy narratives. She also mentioned Maximilian as one of Murphy's 15 most iconic roles.
I don't know if I can ever do that again. It's so, I have really sensitive eyes. I don't know how people that wear contact lenses go and just pop a thing in their eye. I can't even get Visine in my eye. Like my eyes spaz out. It would take like a half hour to get the contact lenses in my eye.
It was a whoop, goddammit, big black naked ass whoop. Get the flip-flop shit on me. You seen the whoop, man? Yeah. To the 25th power.
In 2022, Sarah Century from Collider included Vampire in Brooklyn in a list of underrated vampire films, praising the performances of Murphy and Bassett along with the humor. Chris Catt from Creepy Catalog, in a retrospective on Wes Craven, also praised the film, calling it one of his more underrated movies. In 2022, Hal Young from Senses of Cinema took a look back at Craven's work and had some nice things to say about the film. Along with Hills 2, Deadly Friend, and My Soul to Take, is often labeled as one of Craven's works. However, out of these, Vampire in Brooklyn really doesn't deserve all the negativity. It's held up better over time compared to many of Craven's other films and stands out in Murphy's career as one of his rare, darker roles. He wraps it up by stating, "It deserves recognition for its captivating portrayal of nighttime Brooklyn, its engaging performances, and for featuring one of Craven's finest endings." Even though he placed Vampire in Brooklyn among Craven's lesser works, Ty Weiner from Collider highlighted Craven's direction and the fantastic chemistry between Murphy and Bassett. In 2022, the Blackbusters podcast pointed out Vampire in Brooklyn as one of Murphy's most fun films and gave a shout out to Angela Bassett's performance.
I'm such a great fan of Wes Craven and Eddie Murphy, and sometimes when you're acting against him, you get kind of caught up in the charisma and the charm. But he's a vampire and he's supposed to do that to you. But you know, you have to do your work also.
Fast forward to 2023 and Dolores Quintana from Fangoria praised Murphy's role. It's a horror comedy, so it's not exactly subtle, but it showcases one of Murphy's most charming and carefree performances. In 2023, Danny Phillips from Hot New Hip Hop gave a shout out to the movie, saying, "Vampire in Brooklyn still shines with its hilarious jokes, over-the-top performances, and a fantastic cast." Fast forward to 2024, Jesse Hassinger from Decider weighed in, comparing it to Murphy's earlier work, Beverly Hills Cop 3. It's way funnier, more engaging, and just more interesting than anything in Beverly Hills Cop 3. Honestly, I'd even pick it over Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Shut the fuck up! Oh, I'm driving! God damn it!
He noted that Vampire shows a different side of Eddie Murphy, one that's less about being the loud comic hero, but still knows how to own the screen with his charm. Jake D from Screen Rant called Rita Vedder, the character played by Bassett, one of Wes Craven's strongest female roles. Chris Sasagway from Collider also praised Vampire in Brooklyn as one of Bassett's best, saying she serves as the anchor to her male co-stars. Fiona Underhill from Slash Film ranked it among Bassett's finest, commenting, "Wow, Vampire in Brooklyn is a fun horror comedy. Bassett's performance remains impressive, even amidst the chaos and mixed tones." Marcus Shorter from Anscape echoed this sentiment, stating, "Even though Murphy's name is first on the poster, narratively, Vampire in Brooklyn belongs to Bassett." To celebrate the film's 25th anniversary, Rotten Tomatoes launched a podcast called Rotten Tomatoes Score Is Wrong About Vampire in Brooklyn, arguing that the film deserved a higher rating. They refer to it as a cult classic. They talk about how videotapes showing a cult classic, praising its underappreciated sense of the bizarre, a killer score, and the undeniable chemistry between Murphy and Angela Bassett. They also pointed out, if you look closely, you can see hints of Craven's knack for blending horror and comedy, along with Murphy's natural charisma. Thank you for showing love to the video, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like the video by hitting the thumbs up and subscribe and share with your family and friends. This content is created by a true fan of horror for hardcore horror nerds. Your support is truly appreciated.